So I thought I'd start off today's video a little bit differently than normal. While I was doing research for the video, I came across this random fact that I wanted to share to try to spice things up a little bit. Maybe this is a one and done deal, or maybe I'll start doing this all the time. We'll see. And that is, random fact of the day. Between 1912 and 1942, music and the performance of music was an Olympic sport. And when I read that, immediately my imagination ran wild, and I began to imagine what this would look like in the modern era. Because most celebrities have huge egos, and they think that they are better than sliced bread, that nothing can beat them, that they are perfect, amazing individuals, extremely talented, the best of the best. And celebrity musicians have egos even higher than that. Additionally, most of them have history and drama amongst themselves. They already have like a little bit of entertainment amongst themselves. And imagine if they had to compete with each other in a competition. And all of the other celebrity musicians from around the world also had to compete. And all of those celebrities think that they are better than sliced bread. There is only one gold medal in an Olympic event. And what that one gold medal will determine, at least in this example, who is the best performer, singer in the entire world. And imagine the drama that would come from a performance like that. I would love to see this. And I'm not kidding, guys. This is my social movement. This is what I'm going to make propaganda over to try to get people to support, because I can't even imagine why the Olympic Committee decided this wasn't a cool thing anymore. What the heck, dude? I would have such a blast watching something like that. So on Tuesday, we talked about social movements and how they use propaganda to spread their message. Specifically, we talked about Black Lives Matter and the Civil Rights Movement. And I'm not going to go deep into explaining the differences and similarities between the two, because you did an assignment over it on Tuesday. And honestly, if you ever want to go back and watch a video from, earlier this year, they are all uploaded to my YouTube account. I post them on YouTube for a reason, because if you remember, in the beginning of the semester, I posted a lot of them on my drive, and then I would share the link. However, I found that I had a problem with accidentally deleting stuff in my drive. So I uploaded it to YouTube because it's a lot harder to delete a video accidentally on YouTube than it is on the drive. Anyway, let's talk about humans for a second, shall we? I asked that question like I'm not human, that I'm an alien or something. I'm human, I swear. Maybe. Humans, for the most part, tend to only care about things that affect us personally. And this is natural, because if we had to get upset about everything that we could possibly be upset over, or if we could cry about every single thing that we could possibly cry over, we would all go insane. This picking and choosing of what really matters to us just kind of makes us who we are as humans. And I'll give you an example of that. A couple of months ago, when this COVID-19 thing started to spread pretty bad, the Cincinnati Reds, decided to cancel the opening day parade. I have a friend who absolutely loves the Reds, and he has gone to every single Reds opening day parade since the day he was born, literally. Like, he was a couple of weeks old when he went to his first Reds day parade. And he was devastated to know that they canceled it this year. This is the only year that he has not gone. And he was almost at the point of tears, which, to me, as someone who does not watch baseball, and I don't have any interest in baseball, I've never watched it growing up, I never had family members who watched it, I literally have only gone to a single Reds game in my entire life, and I left in like the 7th inning. I've never been interested in baseball. So I'm listening to him complain and almost in tears because of the cancellation of this parade, and I'm almost laughing because I could not care less whether or not this parade happened. Yes, I'm upset in the fact that my friend is devastated, but I'm not upset about the actual parade being canceled, because I've never gone to one. And I think there are other things that I should probably use my emotions for in my life that need them much more than a parade that I just wouldn't have gone to anyway. Both of the social movements that we discussed on Tuesday understood this, and understood that if they wanted their social movement to grow, they would have to find ways to connect to the issues that matter to as many people as possible. If the Reds really wanted me to care about the cancellation of the opening day parade, they would make like an all-you-can-eat buffet that's free. Because I care about food more than I care about baseball, I would be a little upset, to be honest with you, if they canceled that. Because it's appealing to not just the Reds fans, but also everyone who likes food. Now, the social movements did this by getting people to watch, or they did this by working, by getting the media to work as a voice so that they can reach as many people as possible. So, for example, during the civil rights movement, they would call up the news agencies and let them know whenever they were planning a demonstration or a march, and allow the media agencies to have basically a front row seat to capture everything that's happened. Let's just say, for instance, that I am a writer for the New York Times, and I get a phone call from a protester, a civil rights leader in Nashville, and they tell me that there is going to be a demonstration in Nashville next week. And so I take my big camera and I fly my butt to Nashville, and I spend the whole day of the demonstration there. And I'm taking notes, I'm interviewing those who are there, I'm taking pictures, and just gathering as much information as I possibly can. And let's just say that it takes 7 hours. By the end of the 7 hours, I have collected hundreds of photographs. I have a notebook that's just completely filled with notes and interview questions and answers. So I return to New York with everything, and I sit down in my office to decide how I'm going to write this article. Additionally, I have to choose which images out of the hundreds that I had I'm going to use. I can only choose a handful of photographs because this is a New York Times article and not, a picture book. So I'm not going to show you all of the boring photos that I took. The vast majority of the photographs that I take is probably going to be quite boring, and I need to find the photographs that tell a story, that make people want to read the article if they see the image. And I need to choose something that will be interesting and catch people's attention. So I'm going to be looking for that image that I took of the police officer arresting the man on the ground. I'm going to be finding the images depicting a police officer hitting a little boy. I'm going to be finding the images of the protester being dragged through the grounds by a police officer. Those are the images that make people want to read my articles. And this is what I mean by propaganda. I am not going to give you the complete story, but only a snapshot of my experiences in the demonstration in Nashville. I could have been in Nashville for 7 hours, and nothing happens. People are standing around, I took photographs, and the last second of the 7 hours, something occurs. And it lasts about 20 seconds, and a police officer pulls down somebody and violently cuffs them on the ground. And I might have taken a photograph of that small 20 seconds of an entire 7-hour experience. And when I get back to New York to write this article, I might actually choose those photos. Now, are those photographs accurate representations of the demonstration in Nashville? Absolutely not. It's one image, or a handful of images, for the 7 hours that I was there. And if you remember back when we first began talking about or reviewing propaganda, one of the methods that propaganda does to try to get you to follow a social movement is altering evidence, or using evidence that makes your side look better than the other, completely ignoring evidence that kind of contradicts your argument. Is that not what just happened with this hypothetical situation of me being sent down to Nashville to write about demonstration? I'm only using a handful of pictures, and those pictures are going to be from the last 20 seconds of the demonstration. And the civil rights leaders understood that journalists need to have the story, and they need to have the story stick out and grab the attention of anyone who walks by. They knew that if they worked with journalism, the journalists would get, a great story, but the images that are shown in media are most likely going to show the demonstrators being pushed around by cops, because that is going to be what's grabbing people's attention, and not, a bunch of cops sitting there having a Coca-Cola, chilling out. That's not interesting to the readers. And at the beginning of the video today, I shared a random fact about music. And that's because today I'm going to talk about music. And I'm going to talk about music as a form of propaganda that was used by the social movements that we discussed on Tuesday. So music is a unique form of propaganda because it's a very simple thing. It does not require a lot of knowledge about the English language. Most of the lyrics that are used in the production of music are very simple words. They don't require you to have a doctorate's degree in English to understand. And it's also very memorable. Music can touch our heartstrings and pull our emotions in ways that very few other things can. I have music that I remember listening to when I was in middle school that to this day is like, emotionally important to me. And I felt like as I was listening to that song that it was speaking directly to my experience. Music also kind of sticks with you. It gets stuck in your head. I've never laid in bed at night thinking about a poster that I saw that won't go away. But I've definitely laid at night driving myself crazy because I had a song in my head. Music is also so ingrained in our everyday life. I would even say much more today than ever, because now we have like iPods and iPhones and music players. You don't even have to have an internet connection anymore, right? You can do basically anything and listen to music at the same time. Play video games, wash dishes, drive a car, shower. You can do all of those things without having to sit and think about and what is happening in the background, because it's just how we live. It's how our society has formed around music. Now I want you to remember that social movements want to reach as many people as possible. And so if everyone is listening to the radio, that is a way that you can reach every single person in the United States. And the more people that hear a song of yours that speaks about a social issue, the more people will think about that social issue and possibly even connect to it on that emotional level that music tends to be really good at. And the more people that connect, the more people will support your movement. This is just basic advertisement. The more you advertise something, the more people are going to pay attention to it and buy your good. So I'm actually going to return to the civil rights movement today because I believe that it was during the civil rights movement where you see the integration between propaganda and music working together in harmony. And today I'm going to talk about two different genres that stem from the propaganda music of the civil rights movement. And those genres are punk and hip-hop. In the 1950s, a genre of music called soul emerged in the African American communities in America. And soul combined jazz, blues, R&B, and gospel music. Because it was created and produced in African American communities, and the African American communities in the 1950s were protesting civil rights, the two merged together very quickly. Singers such as Joan Baez, who is actually not African American, but was an activist for the civil rights movement, immediately begins to incorporate political lyrics into her songs to guide the social movement even further. She actually sang during the March on Washington, right before Martin Luther King Jr. gave his I Have a Dream speech, and the performance that she made actually really helped to gather more supporters for the movement, especially white Americans who were looking at somebody that they look up to and respect, like Joan Baez, and saying like, oh my gosh, if she's supporting this kind of thing, this is something that I need to do as well. And you see stuff like this all the time today. Celebrities support activist movements, and immediately the movement blows up in popularity. Everyone is all of a sudden talking about it. An example of that would be like the Me Too movement. Once Kesha started going out talking about her experience in the music industry, the whole thing kind of blew up in the air, and now it's still like one of the biggest social movements of the day. That really is what happened to Joan Baez. As I mentioned earlier, everyone listens to music, and if Joan Baez is singing about civil rights movement in her songs on the radio, you're now reaching every American through music. Soul music originated in African American communities in major cities. Those cities also had large white populations who didn't necessarily follow along and contribute to the soul music movement, but watched as the African American population in the United States began to unify under the lyrics of soul music. So by the 1960s, the hippie movement was in full force, and white activists began to integrate music with the social movement at the time. And I'm not expecting you to remember this, but I think it will help you in your assignment today. The hippie movement was about peace and love. The hippie movement really laid its foundation, was all about peace and love. So when the United States joined in the Korean War, many hippies were angry. Artists like Bob Dylan and the Beatles wrote and performed songs that directly attacked the Vietnam War. And those artists began to build music festivals like the famous Woodstock Festival of '69. The Woodstock Festival included artists of all kinds that would unite the hippie movement under the lyrics of the performing artists. So the artists were, again, singing songs protesting the Vietnam War. Everybody was traveling to San Francisco for the Woodstock concert, and the same thing that was happening with soul music in the civil rights era was happening with the hippie movement and rock music. Now, I can't go through the entire history of rock music because we don't have the time, but The hippies really believed in the power of democracy in the 1960s, but slowly they began to lose their faith. Their continued protests did not make a difference, and many people died in the Korean War. In fact, technically speaking, the Korean War has never ended. We've never signed a truce between North Korea and ourselves. So, the hippie movement was a failure. In the hippie movement, the activists were trying to work with the government to use democracy and get the government to listen to them. But by the 1970s, they began to see the government as the problem. The frustration and angers from the failures of the hippie movement helped to develop a form of rock music called punk music. And the very look of punk is full of frustration, anger, and violence. Whereas the hippie is all about peace and love, punk music was about, hey, if you're not working with us, you're working against us, and you are now our enemy. Bands such as the Sex Pistols performed songs with heavy drums, guitar, and anger shouts to give an outlet for the frustrated youths. And to be honest, I am a huge fan of punk music. I went through a really, really bad punk phase in high school. I wish I had pictures of it. It's embarrassing. Still a big fan. Still listen to the songs. The energy behind it pumps me up. And once again, this is all going on in the white population of New York, and just blocks away from the capital of punk music in the United States, another form of music was created. Historians haven't been able to tell the exact time period in which this happened. All we know is that African American and Latino Americans that lived in the Bronx had developed combinations of rhythms and raps that would later be named hip-hop. Due to the living conditions at the time, the hip-hop culture dealt a lot with poverty and unemployment, education, discrimination, as well as living on the streets. Once again, hip-hop, once it was created, went crazy, and it spread throughout the United States. And each major city kind of had its own take on hip-hop. Regardless of what city you lived in, the lyrics largely remained the same, although there are some really major rivalries between East Coast rap of New York and West Coast rap of California. It did get violent. Biggie and Tupac, you should know those names. They both died because of the rivalry. And hip-hop continues on to this day as a force to be reckoned with. It gives people on the streets, people who are living in harder conditions in life, an outlet, a way to talk about their experiences as an African American. So today I'm going to give you a choice between two different songs. One will be an early hip-hop song, and one will be an early punk song. And you only have to choose one. I have provided a link to the songs as well as a link to the lyrics in case you didn't want to listen to the songs or for some reason your internet's all crazy. You can look at the lyrics. I'm not going to be upset over it. But you need to listen to or read the song and answer 4 questions. And I'm going to go ahead and go through the questions now, but these questions are going to be on your assignment page. So the first question is going to ask you, while you're listening to the song, what do you think this song is about? The second question is, what emotions do you feel while listening or reading the lyrics? Number 3, is the message of the song still relevant today? And number 4 is, do you think this song is an effective tool to get support for the social movement that it's trying to appeal to? As always, let me know if you have any questions, and other than that, you have a wonderful weekend, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you back here on Tuesday.